See, the topic is slightly different from the other panelists maybe, but it is more related to the invention part. So how do we invent and why we should invent? And I'm calling it reaching future faster first. And I think that seems to be the algorithm that we should have. And it is more related to maybe we need to play the game slightly different, the patent game as we say, and maybe it requires a little bit of different understanding also. Of course, all these ideas that we have, we assume they will be converted into dollars, but typically that never happens, even if we keep on making a lot of presentations. That's what the cartoon is saying actually. It says that assumption is that it will be dollars, but future is not about dollars. It may not be all about the ideas also. Okay, the first question, the first point that I have is the functions that we have been performing continues to remain same. The communication function continues. Okay. However, the means, the methods that we have been using are changing for many centuries. So it is really about how do we perform the same function that we all of us know, maybe by improved means, by different means, and maybe through different understanding, if you may. So communication was already there. It was always there. It is, maybe you can see the first binary digits were created by a very different means than what we are used to now. Okay. I did some sort of a study on Google Trends. I think some of you are aware of Google Trends. All of you know Google Trends. I searched 3 words, globalization, innovation, and complexity. And the Google Trends actually gives you amount of search that has happened over a period of time on these particular keywords. So you can see the amount of search that has happened. In last year, I did the search on Google Trends, globalization, innovation, complexity. And globalization comes out to be 2 times more than complexity. And innovation comes out to be 5 times more. Okay. So maybe we can infer that maybe to adapt to this world, which is increasing globalization and increasing complexity, we really need 5 times innovation. This is maybe a surrogate metric. Second, today morning, I also did the same study. Also sort of once again did the same search, and it comes out to be similar ratio continues to be there even today, this year. So in a year, nothing has changed. So we really need 5 times more innovation to adapt to the world that is increasing in complexity. Also, globalization is actually creating this sort of. So unfortunately, we are not used to innovation. We have a fundamental problem in continuing to do the way we do things in the same way. Massive innovation is required to adapt to the world that we have, but it requires fundamental shift in the way we think. And that actually is the key problem. Because unless we really think new ways or new understanding of how systems can be created to create new functionality, we'll continue to repeat what we have. Gary Hamel wrote this book, some of you might have heard, called Future of Management. And interestingly, he says intellect, diligence, and obedience are not the key parameters that are going to add value to the new world that we have. We really need passion, creativity, and initiative rather than intellect, diligence, and obedience. Now, this is a very big change. How do you create passion? How do you create creativity? And how do you help people create initiative is a big, big task for everyone. Whether companies, big companies, small companies, startups, or employees, or even countries, we really need to create passion, creativity, initiative, because intellect, diligence, and obedience, we can buy, it seems, as per this professor. So, I believe that we need about 7 P's of making an idea happen. We need to have pride, passion, perseverance, patience, planning, purpose, obviously, and most important, I would say, planet, which basically says we need to have understanding of Earth. If you do not really make those inventions that we have, which are conforming to the requirement of Earth, we are not going to continue. Herbert Simon got Nobel Prize for Bounded Rationality. He was an economist. He wrote a fantastic book called Sciences of the Artificial. He says, our essential task is simply to keep open the options for the future, or perhaps even to broaden them a bit by creating new variety and new niches. Now this is, I think, a very important point. How do we create new varieties continuously and new niches? We really need some sort of a system, some sort of a method to do this. Okay, nothing invents better than nature. Okay, you can see we may think that we have all the technologies of the world, but nature can trample us with whatever we may create at any time. Okay. So we really need to understand nature. And how does nature create and how does nature invent? This Cicero talked about nothing is more inventive than nature. And I think it was long back he talked about it. All our technologies and innovations may not stand the test of nature. However, we have some sort of a method and we can learn from nature. That method is some sort of algorithm and which is called the evolution. It seems evolutionary system, the method of evolution is a relatively new understanding that we have. And this NASA report in 2009 talks about a very nice sort of a integration of information about even the cosmos itself is evolving. And the idea that the universe and whatever it has are also constantly evolving, it is relatively a new understanding. In fact, last 50 years also only, we have thought that actually the world is evolving. The cosmic evolution is actually a sort of a method where we look at how these planets, stars are evolving. And evolution as an understanding is relatively a new phenomenon. So how do we understand, even if Darwin talked to us about 100 to 150 years back, that evolution or the theory of evolution that he told us, our acceptance of that evolution as a method of creating something new seems to be only 50 years old. So we have cosmic evolution from physical evolution to biological evolution, then cultural evolution. And we'll just look at some of the new findings a little later. But what exactly it says is that discrete stages can be identified of how various evolutionary systems are evolving, from the physical structures to biological evolution, then to the cosmic evolution, as they say. Okay. There is a book called Singularity is Near, written by someone named Ray Kurzweil, and he gave us this law of accelerating returns. What it means is that evolution applies something called a positive feedback to all the processes that it has. In the form, more capable methods result from one stage of evolutionary progress to the next stage. As a result, the rate of progress of an evolutionary process increases exponentially. Further, he says, the rate of this rate, the rate itself is the exponential rate. So this double exponential actually creates a very fast approach towards something new. So one particular method is the biological evolution that we already know about, which is some sort of a positive loop that he talks about in the law of accelerating return. Second point he talks about in this book, The Singularity is Near, is about technological evolution. Technological evolution is also similar to biological evolution as per this particular framework, where the emergence of the first technology creates species, resulted in a new evolutionary process of technology. Therefore, the evolution is an outgrowth of and maybe a continuation of the biological evolution as per this particular hypothesis. Okay. A specific paradigm, a specific way of solving problems provides some sort of a growth at a particular point until the method exhausts its potential. And most of us are aware of the S-curves that we know, the S-curves of technology, and then you need to start a new S-curve if you may. So when this happens, you need to create something called a paradigm shift. So this is a very interesting output from the study, from the NASA report and this Kurzweil's report. Even if you look at all these reports, we have a new method of how the world is evolving, or how the world is working actually. It's called the evolutionary approach. So how do we reach future faster? Maybe the law of accelerating returns tells us future is approaching us faster because there is a double exponential in the way in which we are evolving. We also need to approach future faster compared to the past. We cannot continue to be complacent with our successes of the past. We need to use the algorithm of nature, which is the evolution, and reaching future faster first. First meaning earlier than other people is the competitive advantage that we have. So it is imperative we continuously invent change to take care of the world that we have. And we call it the globalizing innovation complexity, or the Jigs-Bang world, very similar to the Big Bang world. Patents are at the center of this whole Jigs-Bang world, because ideas needs to be protected in the globalizing world. And if you do not protect yourself, or even if you protect, you do not really change, it is possible that maybe you may not be able to survive as an organization. Kodak, for example, is a very nice example. It was the Google of its world, its time in 1880, when it came into existence, saying that digital or non-digital photography, the Polaroid type of photography, was what they had. They changed the world, but unfortunately they could not change themselves, even if they invented the digital photography. So strength of an invention and of a patent are the key questions. How strong are your ideas? And then, of course, the invention and patents is key. Learning to invent is the key need in this world, and we need to inculcate what I call the inventive thinking. And we'll just explain how does this stories of change or the theory of evolution applies to inventing. This is really the key point that we have. And the first person who studied this evolution theory, or sort of it emerged out of the study, was this guy's name, Altshuler. Altshuler was a Russian, and he was working with Soviet Navy in the patent office. He studied these various patents, and he came out with theory of inventive problem solving. And if you look at these two particular laws that he formulated, evolution of systems or technical system is not a random process, but obeys certain laws. And products processes evolve towards the increase of perfection by elimination of something called conflicts or contradictions. Okay. Of course, because every time when you propose something new, it is difficult for people to digest. Stalin put him in jail in Siberia when he proposed this. So he formulated a method called TRIZ, or theory of inventive problem solving. What this study gave, they analyzed lots of patents, 2.5 million patents, he and his disciples. What this study gave was some sort of categorization of various levels of inventions. He studied these patents and analyzed the strength of all these patents and sort of categorized them into what makes a successful or a strong patent. And interestingly, about 77% patents they found are very small improvements in the basic system that we have, both level 1 and level 2. Only about 18 to 19% are real changes about level 3. And of course, level 4 are the real game changers, which is 4% of the patents that we have. Level 5 are the key discoveries, and which is very rare. So potentially, if this framework can be used to categorize and see how much of your invention compared to prior art has the inventive potential. Okay, compared. So what we have done, of course, once you have these levels, you will see that at the lower level, you need to do more work, more patents will be there to create that higher level patents. This is sort of a very interesting framework to analyze inventions. So we'll just give you this example. Apple filed this patent, one of the patents, on this touch screen. And this particular patent has, you might have seen that particular, the unlocking or locking, you just have to do this one particular, this finger swipe type of thing. This is the patent, and this was filed in 2005. So we used our method. What we have done, we have, as a company, we have analyzed these, used the TRIZ methods and quantified the levels of invention. So you can read a patent or an invention disclosure and actually quantify which level it is through this particular process. And this give us a very nice sort of an input about how strong is my invention compared to the prior art, even before filing also. And even after filing, you can evaluate patents. So in this way, you can actually do all these questions you can answer. You get some sort of a compared to prior art, particular invention, where it is, you get some sort of scores from the system, and you get the level of invention. So for example, this patent came out to be at level 2, because it is solving a particular contradiction or conflict that is there. Further, we also analyzed a little bit of data on what happens to these levels of invention. If it's a level 1 invention, it's a level 2 invention, what is the probability that someone is going to circumvent this particular patent after how many years? So on the y-axis, on the green axis, you have the 3, 6, 9, all those 24 years. So you can see the probability that if you are having a very high inventiveness, the probability that someone is going to invent around that particular patent, if it is a strong level 3, level 4 patent, is very low compared to if it is a level low or not level 2. What does it mean? The life of the patent that you have, the life of invention that you have, you can get some sort of a fair idea about where it is. We call it the life of inventions curves for probability of next invention versus years after invention disclosure. And these are the data which actually can be used to sort of see how far your invention is with respect to prior art, and also what is the possible future potential of that particular patent. One of the key output of this study that he did, how to invent, is the key question. How do we generate ideas, lots of ideas, and how do we invent along with this evolutionary method? He categorized something called an inventive problem, where you do not have any particular means of solution, high psychological inertia, and contains conflicts in the system. So in the light of the understanding that we have now, along with this NASA report, Altshuler's postulate in 1946 that technological systems are evolutionary and obeys certain laws is actually amazing, if you really look at that. More important is he created a framework to apply these laws of innovation, laws of technical evolution, to invent the next. And what is the ultimate objective of evolution of the technical system? Is to create an ideal system which performs the function. Ideality. So concept of ideality he created, and in fact we can actually work backwards from the ideality to help people invent, and that is what is very, very solid when it comes to this sort of a framework. For example, the glasses, the eyeglasses have, if you see the evolution, it is moving more and more towards ideal system. And where is the ideal system coming? The key function that is being performed is the lens, right? That if you look at from the earlier system, which had a lot of other subsystems to hold the lenses on the ear, all these are slowly going off. You are removing only the basic function that is required to be done. And the specific subsystem that actually does that is only remaining, ultimately moving over towards laser surgery. So this is the evolution, and this is where we need to understand how evolution can be predicted. Interestingly, all those S-curves that we talk about, technology S-curves, are also mapped to about 9 laws of evolution. So first, the cardinal law is called the ideality law, and other 8 laws of the systems are also defined. And you can see at various stages of evolution of a system, some of these laws are more prominent. And what we have done, we have taken these laws which are mapped to certain lines of evolution, and we actually analyze every invention or even patent on these lines of evolution and look at, compared to prior art, this particular invention, how much it has moved on each of these lines of evolution. And this gives us a framework or sort of a method for us to invent. And you can get this sort of a graph compared to, the green one is the prior art, the red one is the new invention, and the blue is the total possibility in that particular field. Now, if you have these on the lines of evolution, you can actually see how much potential you have in this and where your particular system is. Now, using this, we can quantify height of inventive step, which seems to be a very, very big problem in the patent law, because non-obviousness or the inventive step seems to be a big problem. Because no one has very clear idea about how much inventive step, no one quantifies. It simply says yes or no, that you have an inventive step or not. Whereas we are trying to say we can actually to some extent give some quantitative mean and also give you how to increase that quantitative step or the inventive step in this process. Thirdly, we have this online tool called Social SiteNet, citnet.com, and this gives you give a patent number, patent to this particular tool, you get some sort of a citation map. I don't know, some of you might have used it already, because last conference also we talked about it. You just give you a particular number. For example, this PCT application is there, and it gives you this sort of a map. And you can zoom these complete network of the citation. This is the depth to citation of that particular patent, so that particular PCT application. And you can see how many forward citation and forward citation, backward citation are there. Further, it quantifies the value of each of these patents in this network on some sort of a scale, where you get the relative value of each of these patents, which can be used to study the whole field. Now, this is also proving to be a very nice tool when you combine the levels of invention, heights of inventiveness, and combine with the social net of the particular patent. this whole framework can give you interesting output and also help you to invent. Just one case study I'll talk about, the field of fluid catalytic cracking in hydrocarbons, and this is a recent work that we have done. And you can see the fluid catalytic cracking, where you use the raw crude petroleum and convert it into gasoline, petrol, or LPG, or different type of products, is a process. It's an old process. However, the number of patents that are being filed, if you see on the left-hand side, on that particular EPO plus USPTO, the number of patents that are being filed are going down, or are saturating in that particular class, IPC class that we have. Okay. Now, what does it mean? If you map it to the levels of invention, most of those level inventions are at level 1 or level 2. They are not, we didn't have level 3 invention in this field for last 15, 20 years. And that seems to be a problem, because unless you create new, you are actually at the saturation of the S-curve that we have. So how do we really look at this? Only way to start something new in this area is to start a new S-curve. And we found one particular recent patent granted in, or published to last year only, called cold radiation cracking. Interestingly, this was not by the known oil companies. This is a very different company. Petra Beam is not known. And they are not using any chemistry or chemical means in this. They are using the physics means of firing with electron beams these carbon chains and breaking those carbon chains, which are really the big carbon chains, and you need to break them to get hydrocarbons out of it, or the gasoline. And interestingly, of course, the problem will be the existing incumbents. Whoever has invested so much of money in this field, they will not be open to change that infrastructure overnight. So there will be a problem. However, this is the start of a new S-curve, maybe. And that is, I think, these are the key ideas that we need to really create. And interestingly, TRIZ, along with these methods that we have looked at, can create this new in a very, very efficient manner compared to what we are used to. And that is why I'm saying patent game needs to be changed, because in the world that we have, globalization, complexity, where innovation is becoming the norm, we really have this particular problem. The future is approaching us very fast. As it approaches us faster, we need to move faster ahead to leapfrog the future. So reaching future faster is the approach, but of course you need to approach it first compared to the inventors or compared to the competition. The best way is to create the future, maybe. And TRIZ-based laws of evolution that we have are the key guidelines. Compared with the new science of networks, the applied to citation analysis can lead to quickly filtering these key new approaches that we have, and maybe aid thinking to invent the next. So this combination we have seen is proving to be really a game changer. As I said, we need to craft the changes, and this is where I end my talk. Thank you for the invitation, and we are sorry for a little late in the day. On the 8th day we are coming, because I was traveling. So I missed the whole conference, but I presume from here onwards I'm here till the evening. Thank you. It's my number also. You can contact and send an email also. Thank you.